Hi, everybody. Shannon Petrovich with Therapist Talks. As soon as people jump in, go ahead and let me know if you can hear me and see me okay. I've added a couple of new toys and I want to make sure that they're all working. So, welcome, and we will get started pretty quickly. Um, so, if you're new to the channel, one of the things that I really want to make clear is that this is a safe place. We want to support each other, help everybody in the world feel like they are not alone, no matter what's going on in your life and what kind of toxic relationship you're struggling with, that you are not alone. And that's the most important thing to me, that people really feel like this is something that this is a place where they feel like their needs are heard, and they know that they're not alone. So if you can let me know that you can see me and hear me okay, that would be super helpful. So just give me a thumbs up or go ahead and type into the comment section. And like I said, I've got I got a thumbs up. Good. So I have a couple of new toys and I hope that they are working. That seems like they must be. So welcome again to Therapist Talks live stream. And we will be going through any of your questions. And I want to prioritize the people who are here and their questions, but I also have a stack of questions that came in over the last few weeks. So I will address those as we have time. And hopefully we'll have time to address everything that everybody wants to talk about. So if you have a topic or a comment or any kind of question, please just jump into the chat section. As I said, this is a safe space, and I want everybody in the world who's struggling with any kind of narcissistic abuse or any mental health issue at all, toxic relationships, all of that kind of thing, just know that you're not alone. This is a safe space where you can talk about things and ask questions, and I will do my best to answer them. So if anybody has a question that's eating at them, please jump into the comment section. And until I get any questions, I will answer the ones that have come in over my various videos. So I'm going to jump in on one that came in a couple of weeks ago that I didn't get a chance to address then. But like I said, if you have a question and topic, I'm going to prioritize you guys that are here. So jump in whenever you have a chance. One of the questions was, how do you live alone? And so I think one of the things that's really important as we, okay, that kind of jumps right in, suggestions for healing from PTSD, EMDR. So when we talk about healing, it's super important that we start at the most important place to start, which is the toxic relationship that we have with ourselves. So in my book, I talk about getting out of the fog and into the clear. And the most important start to that is to recognize how we talk to ourselves inside our own heads in a really negative, harsh, awful way. And if you notice what you're saying to yourself inside your head, that kind of thing is going on. They've estimated about 40,000 times a day. So if you could imagine somebody sitting next to you saying, you're stupid, you're unworthy, you're unlovable, you're ugly, or whatever, all of that toxic stuff that we say to ourselves is the worst problem that we are facing. And so what happens typically during a traumatic event, whether it's in childhood or whether it's with a current relationship, is that we internalize a lot of self-talk that is really negative and really harsh, and we blame ourselves because the other person is blaming us. And so we internalize all this self-hatred, and we have a toxic relationship within ourselves. And that's the most important thing to start with. So even when I answer the question, how do you live alone? You can't live alone if you are in this toxic relationship with yourself. It's the same as living with a toxic partner. So it's really important that you address that part first. In my book, I walk through with journal prompts how to journal out all the nasty, negative, evil things you say to yourself throughout a day. And then you shift gears and look at all the things that you know are true about you. this is harder, and you might have to employ a friend or a family member who really loves you to help you with this part. So you want to find out, if you were to meet you, what would you love and respect about yourself? Well, I'm compassionate, I'm caring, I'm empathic, I show up for people. I care about people. I care about kids. Whatever it is that are truths about you. When you list those things off, when you talk about those things, and you start to own those things, then you can see, okay, these are the lies that I tell myself throughout every day. These are the truths, and I can start to feed myself the truth and shut down the lies. And that's a really important step in terms of healing from PTSD, in terms of living alone. Like, how do you live alone if you absolutely are hateful towards yourself? You can't. So you have to learn to be your own best friend. And that's really, really critical. EMDR is a really wonderful thing that you can use for PTSD. And if you can access an EMDR therapist, that is the pinnacle and that is wonderful. If the the strategies involved in EMDR are so healing and so helpful. When I first went to the training years ago, I was kind of skeptic, really. And what I found was that it really does work. It's really helpful. So, EMDR, I highly recommend if you can access that. Thank you for the live stream. Do you have any advice to get over the anger and frustration with being threatened into silence by a narcissist who has threatened legal action for speaking the truth? Yikes. I'm so sorry you're going through that. So, advice for getting over the anger and frustration. So, there are a number of steps to getting through that anger and frustration. One of the things that we have to do is make peace with ourselves and forgive ourselves, because a lot of times, as soon as we make that decision, that oh my God moment hits us and we want out of that relationship for sure, for good, done. Then we go, oh my God, I'm so stupid that I stayed for so long. Don't do that. Again, that messaging that you are giving yourself 40,000 times a day is too toxic. You can't withstand that. So you have to recognize, okay, the things that made me stay, what were those? I'm a dedicated person. I'm very committed. I'm very loyal. I stick with something that I say I'm going to do. Those kinds of. I believe in people. I believe the best about people. Those are really good character qualities. So take ownership of those and recognize those are some of those things that you want to write in your list of things I love and respect about myself. And at the same time, I can't share those kinds of things or be in relationship in deep ways with people who are toxic to me because I am so committed, because I'm so dedicated, etc. So that's part of it, is that you start to let go and say, all right, I got to make peace with this. I made a mistake. My creepometer did not go off in the right way. I got sucked in. It's awful. I've survived. And I forgive myself and I can let go of that person, because forgiveness of them is a really tricky thing. You don't want to forgive and forget and jump back in with them. Not at all. What you want to say to yourself is, I'm not willing to drink the poison of this hatred and anger and stress for the rest of my life. I've drunk enough poison from them and I'm done with that and I'm moving on. I'm going to reclaim my life. I'm going to rebuild my sense of self. I'm going to rebuild who I am, what I'm about, where I'm going to um, spend my loving energy. And so all of that is a process. And again, I kind of help with journal prompts throughout my book. But if you can recognize that anger and frustration is really just drinking that poison continually, you can start to say, okay, I don't want to invest anymore in that. I don't want to rent free space inside my brain for that person anymore. They're evicted. They're done. I'm done. I'm going to live my life. And people even want to dwell on vengeance. And that's a really awful, awful place to camp out. You just don't want to live there. So it's really important to let go, recognize you don't want to live in their skin and you don't want to camp out in their presence. And the more you dwell on that anger and frustration and vengeance and all that stuff, the worse you feel. and it's a never-ending cycle. I did a video on, so you want revenge on your narcissistic ex, and everybody jumped into that video going, "Ooh, I want vengeance. How do I do it?" And then I talk about forgiveness and letting go and stopping the drinking of the poison and stopping renting free space in your brain to that person. And I think it was kind of frustrating to some people, but at the end of the day, I think it's helpful and healthy when you can move on and let go. So threatening legal action, that is, and silence, and I don't know what to, I think you have to talk to a lawyer about legal stuff. But I think again, the more you learn to let go and stop ruminating on them. There was another question that came in about rumination. And I think this is really, really important. And he said, that where you describe the awareness of rumination and how we are trained to have our entire focus on that person. Your lifetime energy and effort revolve around noticing their every mood, placating their every need, taking care of their every emotion. This does not stop when you leave, it can even intensify. So, recognizing that you've got to leave emotionally as well as physically. So, leaving physically sometimes comes as a result of a crisis. And then people have to recognize that even though they may be 1,000 miles away, they haven't emotionally left. And so they're still ruminating on that person. They're still worried about them. They're still sometimes even looking at them online and noticing things like that are really unhealthy. You don't want to spend any more time, energy, focus um, on them. You want to start to pay attention to you. What are your moods? What are your needs? What are your emotions? What are your thoughts? What are your dreams? All of that stuff you've been neglecting for months or years, whatever time you've been in this relationship, now has to become your focus. So every ounce of attention that you're focusing on them, you're neglecting you. And this is what I really want to drive home. That it takes so much work to heal and so much work to rebuild and reconnect with others and find who you are and what you're about and what you want your life to be about. Focusing any attention on them is really unhealthy. Again, the legal question you'll have to ask an attorney about. Narcissistic women know that this guy does not have any support. Love bombing can be especially effective on them, and then the silent treatment especially destructive. So I think, you know, anybody, they're talking about immigrants being very vulnerable, and I think that so many people in our society are vulnerable. And in one of my videos, I talk about the narcissist and the empathic person, a tragically perfect match. And what I mean by that is that there is a a symbiosis in there that is really awful. So a narcissist is completely self-centered. They are non-empathic. They don't feel the need to focus on other people's emotions, their needs, their wants, their thoughts, their feelings, nothing. They're all about themselves. An empathic person, on the other hand, loves to focus on other people's needs, emotions, thoughts, feelings. You know, they feed off of another person's happiness. So when a narcissist and an empath get together, it's this perfect symbiosis that's really tragic for the empathic person. And this is really crucial to recognize. If you're an empathic person, you are at risk. So not only immigrants, but anyone who is empathic is really in harm's way when it comes to narcissists. So what can we do? Can we stop being empathic? No, no way. That's one of the most beautiful parts of us. So what do we have to do? We need to develop a really trustworthy creepometer. And that means that we recognize people for who they are, that we watch how they treat others, how they talk about others, how they interact with others. And we notice those things as the facts, and we don't get drawn in by their words. So we recognize that they can lie with the best of them. In fact, I've sometimes joked that they're lying so much all the time that you can't tell the truth because when people say you can tell a lie because there are tells. No, somebody's lying all the time. There are no tells because their demeanor never changes. It's always lies. So you have to recognize that you cannot trust words. You have to trust actions. So when you see how people act in the world, what happens when they're frustrated? What happens when they're disappointed or hurt or upset or angry? You have to watch what a person does with that, what their actions say about them. And when they laugh at other people's pain, when they make fun of other people, when they trash somebody that used to matter to them, all of those things are tells. Those are real tells that tell you that that person is not for you and not an empathic person. So it is, anybody who is empathic is very at risk, and they will separate you from your support, love bomb you, and that can be, and then do that silent treatment, devaluing. And it's the cycle that really, really hooks you in. So this cycle of love bombing, devaluing, come here, go away, all of that stuff is what hooks you in and gets you trauma bonded to them. So then you start to say, well, when I do this, then things go really well, and we're back to where we were when we started. And basically what you're doing is training yourself. They're training you, but you're training yourself to placate, peace keep, and people please. So I call those the 3 Ps, and those are the deadly 3 Ps. Those are the 3 things we want to stop doing right away, because when we're peacekeeping, placating, and people pleasing, we are not taking care of ourselves at all. We are basically giving ourselves completely over to that person, and we are drinking that poison again. And we're getting more and more trauma bonded over time. And every time something bad happens and we blame ourselves and we try harder to peacekeep and placate, we're basically telling them, yes, you were right. I did something wrong. And I'm going to try really hard not to do that bad thing again. And then we're placating and peacekeeping even faster and harder. So that is deadly stuff for us empaths. We got to stop doing those 3 Ps. Like a poison IV drip. Yeah, when you're isolated with a toxic person, you are taking that poison IV drip. But if you don't emotionally leave at the same time that you physically leave, you continue to IV drip that into your veins, and you can't survive that. It actually has been shown to deplete our immune system, to make us physically sick, emotionally sick, spiritually sick, bankrupt us completely. And so it's extremely important that we really, really listen to this. Can you explain a bit more about the MVR technique? So EMDR, and you can look up an EMDR therapist in your local area on EMDR, .org. And it might be EMDRI international.org. Anyway, the idea is that at night when we do rapid eye movement, the theory is that we are processing our day. And what's really important is that we have that REM sleep in order to process the stress of the day before, so that we can get up and be ready for the stress of the next day, right? And so that restorative sleep only happens when you have REM. And the idea, or the theory, is that we're washing that information from our logical to our emotional, to our logical to our emotional, and then we put it away. Well, the definition of trauma is that it overwhelms our central nervous system. It overwhelms our ability to process it and put it away. So it stays stuck in the little amygdala, which is our reactive brain. I call it little monkey mind because it's what we share with all the other animals. But we also have this computer upstairs, our higher cortex, our rational mind. So when we're stuck in the amygdala, which is fight, flight, freeze, and it's our God-given ability to have the energy, the adrenaline rush to fight or flight or freeze in moments of terror and danger. So we need that, but we don't want to live there. And so if you have a lot of trauma, complex trauma over time, you tend to live in this fight, flight, freeze mode and constant adrenaline to your brain, and it's exhausting. It's also depleting of all of your happy chemistry, your endorphins, your GABA, your all of that stuff. So what EMDR seeks to do is to utilize basically a bilateral stimulation. It's not any electrodes or any electricity or anything like that. All it does is have lights and sound that go back and forth so that your attention is drawn back and forth, just like if you had rapid eye movement for sleep. So in this process, you revisit some of the messages in your old trauma, and then you can process them and then put them away in a different way. So a lot of times what happens is that you take something that you blamed yourself for and you have a realization, I was not to blame. This was not my fault. And those kinds of messages can be more deeply internalized when you're doing EMDR around them than just talking about them. So I think it's a great thing, but it's EMDR. Can have more support. Native borns can have more support. No, this is true, absolutely. And I recognize that immigrants certainly are a more vulnerable group, as are many more vulnerable groups. And the problem is anyone who's vulnerable is a target. And so when you recognize that you can be a target and you learn to take care of yourself, then you will be less of a target. And I think we all, as empathic people, need to recognize those who are more vulnerable groups in our community and really reach out and be present for them. Absolutely. If a narcissist was the only person one got involved with after migrating to a new country, it's so hard to break up. Oh my gosh, it has to be. That would be a really tragic and difficult thing. And that's where channels like this and information and domestic violence hotlines and all kinds of supports like that would be really critical. And if you know somebody who is or you are an immigrant and are vulnerable, please reach out to people as much as you can in your local area, because that would be really hard. And the gaslighting is only effective if you isolate someone. And isolation is obviously a massive tactic for a narcissistic person. Let's see. Sorry, sounds like you already had it. I wish I had heard you during my internship. Well, thank you. You know, a lot of these things that so many people have taught me so much over the years, including all of my clients and all of the people that I've worked with and worked around, and colleagues and et cetera. And I've been to so many lectures and conferences with amazing people. So it's all kind of mishmash together. And I put it together into this book. It's a small, very readable, and also very affordable book. I made it as cheap as I could. Not go upside down with it. But I really hope that people who really want to do that work will check it out, because I think it is going to be helpful to people. I wish I found your channel a year ago. It would have saved me so much trouble. Yeah, again, try not to go there in terms of beating up on yourself or anything like that. I wish I had known this 35 years ago when I was making bad mistakes too. And all I can say is that that's a big part of my passion to share this information with others, is because I had to figure it out on my own. And a lot of that was not very graceful. And so my hope is just to share and to provide support and help others not have to go through the journey that I did. If other people have questions, please jump in. Otherwise, I'm going to jump into some other things that have come in. So here's one. If I feel hurt after my ex-narcissist discarded me and I want to sabotage their future relationships with old and new supplies, does it make me a horrible person? Am I becoming a narcissist too? How do I move past and let go of that depression and angry feeling? I don't want to be this horrible person, but it's so difficult to control, and I'm shocked. I don't know how to deal with myself. So I think this is, again, kind of goes back to part of what we were saying, that you have to begin to make peace internally. And that comes with recognizing, again, that the things that made you stay are good qualities and that you don't want to get rid of those qualities, but that you now need to take better care of yourself and now need to really up your creepometer skills so that you won't get sucked in again. Being careful, being cautious. I did one on developing a trustworthy creepometer. And I said, and the um, secondary topic to that is, and the one thing that will undermine you. And that is sex. So, intimacy before you are ready, intimacy before you really, really, really deeply trust that person and know that person for all their goods, their bads, their ups, their downs, all of it is just foolishness. And yet, our culture seems to be really focused on that. And so, it's really important that as you're getting to know somebody and you're feeling like you're in love and you're not sure if you're being love bombed or loved, that you just step back. You've got to, if you step back and you give it space and time to breathe, and you give yourself space and time to breathe, and you don't jump right in, then you will see the nuances of this person. You will see the stuff that you like and the stuff that you're not so crazy about. You'll see what happens, like I said, when they get stressed or frustrated or disappointed or hurt. When you see those things in action, then you can start to build a foundation of trust. So many people jump into intimacy before they know that person very well at all. Then what happened? You got your amygdala hooked in. You are now in that love bombing, devaluing, and you're going to be having a really difficult time separating. So super important to do that. And we talked about that angry envy feeling, that we have to make peace with ourselves, make peace with others, and begin to stop that IV drip of poison coming into our veins. And no, you're not becoming a narcissist. You're just angry. And honestly, I talked about how that's our, the fight, flight, or freeze mode is our natural ability to have an adrenaline surge to give us the energy to fight, flight, or freeze. A lot of times when we come out of that frozen fog, we feel really, really angry. And actually, that is the appropriate emotion because this person has violated your boundaries like crazy for years, maybe. And when someone violates your boundaries, the natural, healthy reaction should be anger or flight. So when you feel that anger, that's your energy to get free. So anger can be that energy to get free, get loose, be done with it, take care of yourself, and move on. If you take that anger and then just start spinning into that negative place of revenge or hostility or even anger at yourself, which I've seen a lot of people get stuck in that place, that's tragic. You don't need that. Like, you are struggling so hard to keep your head above water already. If you're piling that stuff on yourself, don't do that. But also don't stay focused out on them. You've already spent months or years focusing on their needs, their wants, their blah, blah, blah. So focusing your anger at them or what they're doing next or their next relationship or any of that, that's all a waste of your life's force, your life energy, your time, your attention. Focus only on what you need and how you are going to move forward. I talk a lot in the book about self-care, rebuilding your sense of self, your connections to others. You're rebuilding your whole life, really, because you've been focused on this other person. So it's really critical that you start to let go, move on, and don't stay focused on them, even in that anger, vengefulness. Okay, let me see if we've got any more. Yeah, especially if their words and behaviors don't match. Don't get bought into their words, for crying out loud. We are so bad at that. Again, it's a wonderful quality to believe in somebody, but don't believe in the wrong person because it's just it's a losing battle. I think my NPD parent is angry, punitive, vengeful. That makes it really hard. Sabotages, destroys. I wish he would forgive, as well as my ex would forgive also. Yeah, it's really it's hard to deal with an angry, vengeful person. And What I would invite you to learn how to do is emotionally detach from that stuff. And we can actually stay in relationship in an emotional and emotionally begin to step back, take care of ourselves. I call it watching the circus go by. So you can recognize this person does these things and go, oh yeah, they're doing that again. Oh yeah, they're doing that again. Oh, there they are doing that again. And you can just sort of step back, take care of yourself. No, it's not about you. They do it to all kinds of people, and if you were, somebody else, they would do it to that person too. That didn't make sense. You know what I'm saying? So watching the circus go by, recognizing that stuff's not about you. They, have had that stuff going on inside of them forever. They will long past you. So recognizing that you can emotionally step back, take care of yourself, and let go so that you can forgive whether they do or not, and you can disengage so that when, say, they are verbally abusive on the phone, you can say, okay, I'll talk to you later, and click. So you're not emotionally attached to that. You know that you're going to take care of you no matter what. And this kind of leads into another thing that people tend to ask a lot. How do you trust again? Well, I don't want you to trust somebody else again necessarily. I want you to learn to trust yourself. So when you start to take care of yourself emotionally, when you learn to step back from other people's drama and don't jump in that monkey cage with those people going crazy and ape, you just step back and go, wow, that's interesting, and just let go of that, then you get good at trusting yourself also, and knowing that no matter what happens, you're going to trust yourself, you're going to trust your own wise mind to make good decisions, to take care of yourself. And so it isn't about trusting other people, because a lot of times when people get that focused, they're pushing themselves to trust again, trust again, trust again. I'm like, no, time out. Don't do that. That's probably the worst thing you can try to push yourself to do. Um, and I'm so sorry that you have an NPD parent, because having an NPD parent is a really special problem. When we know that parenting is very altruistic, it's all about that other person. You really pour your heart and soul into this little being, and half the time they, you know, if they're not throwing up or pooping on you, or then later as teenagers verbally pooping on you. I mean, it's an altruistic thing, right? We're not doing it for ourselves. But a narcissist is actually doing it for themselves. So they only feel a sense of connection to that little being when that little being is bringing them adoration or attention, or they look cute in the photos, and so it's a very that self-focused parenting is so toxic for a child. So in general, I would say if you've been raised by a narcissist, you have a lot of self-esteem, self-worth issues. You don't really know who you are or what you're about or what makes you worthwhile. You tend to be very focused on, if I look good, I feel good about myself. If I'm performing well, I feel good about myself. And if I'm not, then I am garbage. You also tend to feel like a burden because your parent makes you feel that way. So all of those things make it really hard to grow up with a narcissistic parent, and sort of reparenting yourself is the job and the work, which is very challenging. And healing from that is a journey. So, get as much support as you need, and, educate yourself, and soothe and support yourself, because you weren't soothed and supported. You were loved and hated, and loved and hated, and you come here, go away, and all of that craziness, and gaslighting, and all of the same stuff that we talk about with relationships, like partner relationships, happens with a parent. But that parent is your person, like they're the people that are supposed to be building you up and encouraging and supporting, and helping you feel like you're a worthwhile little person. And when you make mistakes, they say it's okay, and when those mistakes become rah, 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 then you internalize all that stuff, and it becomes very, very hard. So take good care of yourself around that. Um, I listened to gut feelings and not rationalized the non-alignment of words and facial expressions. I would not have let her cause so much emotional damage and then physical injury. This is a really good point, and we tend to undermine ourselves a lot. And so we can see things that don't line up and don't match up, and we will undermine ourselves instead of saying, my wise mind is lining up these facts and this is not good. And then, oh, but they just had a hard day or they're going through a rough time and blah 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 blah. But when a person attacks you with their rough time, when a person I did a recent one, the martyr narcissist. This is really tricky. When someone attacks you from victim space, you know what I mean by that? Like when they're blasting you, and then they say, "See what you made me do? Look, you made me so mad. I attacked you." Wait a minute. You're responsible for your behaviors, not me. So this attacking from victim space keeps you hooked into, and it also helps you undermine yourself and your own gut feelings and your own wise knowledge. So it's super important that you recognize that. Do narcissists come to you for therapy, or is it just their victim? I think NPD will never seek help as they know it all, right? So, yeah, it's really, really rare that I get someone with narcissistic traits that shows up for therapy. Typically, they'll get dragged in by a partner and they'll only stick around as long as they feel like they are manipulating me. And if they can't manipulate me, then they blow out pretty fast. And so typically is what happens. Once in a while, somebody with milder narcissistic traits comes to me for therapy because they're not successful in their relationships. And it could be at work, or it could be with a parent or a child or a partner. And so they come because they're in emotional pain because of something they've done that other people have called them on. But like I said, this is more in the milder range. The full-blown narcissist absolutely does not believe that what they are creating is their fault. They just plain don't believe that. They are, if you look at the video I did on what is narcissistic personality disorder really, I walk through the whole diagnostic statistical manual, blah, blah, blah. I hate that thing. But anyway, walk through all the traits. And then I also talk about how there's a mild, moderate, and severe of everything in the DSM. And so in the severe range, you really have somebody who has zero empathy, has zero concern for others' emotions, thoughts, feelings, needs. In the milder range, you have somebody who kind of waffles back and forth. They have these narcissistic traits, but then they kind of regret it or kind of are remorseful. And so they struggle in the middle, somewhere in the middle. So those very narcissistic people have a delusional level of narcissism. And what that means is that they are not in touch with reality. So if you give them reality and it's plain in their face, they'll say, "No, that's not so." And in their mind, they literally believe that what they're saying is true, and that the more they say it, the more true it is, which is not. And so they'll continue to feed those delusions back and forth, back and forth. So you have to recognize that because you cannot reason with them. You can't take them into therapy because, like I said, they will only stick around as long as they're manipulating the therapist. And unfortunately, they are successful sometimes. And so if you have gone into therapy with a narcissist, you probably feel like you got hit by a truck because then the narcissist gets the therapist lined up against you and gets you doing all the work and taking all the blame and off to the races again. So it's the worst thing in the world to take a narcissist into couples therapy. Bad idea. Watching the circus go by. Yeah, not my monkeys, not my circus, not my monkeys. That's one of my favorite phrases. Is it advisable to disengage and avoid all the narcissist flying monkeys and henchmen too? I was hesitant to give up a social circle that the narc is still involved in, but figured best to dissociate. Whew, it's a hard one because your connectedness is so important. But I don't think you can stay in a circle where that person still circles because they're going to constantly be doing their dance and engaging other people into their world, and you're going to spend all your time and energy and effort and attention, again, undoing their lies, undoing their damage, dealing with the flying monkeys, dealing with the gaslighting, and recognizing that they're still kind of abusing you. And so I think it's probably best to move forward into a different circle. And you can even sort of, if there are people that you're closer to, you can share with them what you're doing and why, and that you would love to spend time with them individually, and, catch lunch or coffee once in a while so that you stay involved with the people who are really special to you, but you don't put yourself in the midst of a bunch of flying monkeys, because that just going to make you sicker. And you're trying to heal, and you just don't need that kind of blast on in your face all the time. So yeah, I think it's probably best to dissociate. And when you get to a place of rebuilding your life, you want to maybe reach into new areas and do new things, like maybe volunteer somewhere. You're going to meet a lot more empathic people volunteering than, say, at a bar or something like that. So recognize that you do have to rebuild, you have to reconnect, you have to sort of retool a lot of the aspects of your life. Maybe you haven't paid attention to your own hopes and wishes and dreams for a long time. And maybe you kind of look around and go, I always wanted to go back to school, or I always wanted to head down this pathway or do something different in terms of my exercise or activity level or something like that. This is a time to really go off in a new direction that you might get passionate about, or you might go, ooh, I didn't like that. I'll try something different. But this is a real opportunity to let go of the old and to move forward into the new. Let's see. After causing me severe injury, they acted like the victim. So this is exactly what I was talking about with the martyr narcissist, or the martyr narc, as I started to call it through that video. And I think it was my most recent video from last week. So look that one up if you want. The martyr narc is a really special breed of cat. They really like to make other people, you initially, but then their world, flying monkeys people, feel sorry for them. And so they can literally come out looking like the victim and you are the abuser, and they can look like the sane one and you are the crazy one. This is a really, really toxic soup, because when you are not only dealing with this abuse and this toxic behavior, but also having other people see you as the problem, I mean, it's very easy for your own little internal voice to go, oh, maybe I am the problem. Oh, maybe I am crazy, blah, 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 blah. So this is really tough. But again, I talk about boundaries, and we can segue into that a little bit because this is kind of coming up. So what is your suggestion for handling narc parents who live in an alternative world? Like I said, one thing, they made it into something completely different and gaslight you about it. So gaslighting and the narcissist kind of go hand in hand, very much so. So when you are being gaslit by narcissistic parents, it's really important that you learn to, again, emotionally step back, recognize what is them and what is you. And if you need to, list out the facts, it's really important to do that. I talked about how the sort of our higher cortex, that's our computer, right? But when we're in that little amygdala, that fight, flight, freeze, we tend to be very much lost in that reactivity. So we don't want to be reactive. We want to calm down that little amygdala. We want to quiet, self-soothe it, self-calm it, so that we can re-engage that upper cortex and engage in our higher thinking, our rational thoughts. And we can say, well, this is what the truth is. This is what's rational. This is what's reality. These things are not. So when you know that for yourself, then whenever they're throwing up the gaslighting and all that toxic stuff, you can step back and go, no, that's not true. And that's and you don't even have to engage with them in that. You can just step back and go, "Oh, wow, there goes the circus again." And so a lot of people say, "Well, do I have to go no contact with anybody who's narcissistic or has traits or whatever?" You actually don't. You can learn to, and this isn't true for everybody. If there's violence, get out. But when it's just these sort of narcissistic traits that pop up and flare up, and the gaslighting and toxicity and stuff like that, sometimes you can kind of just learn to step back when that's going on. So if there's reason to stay in that relationship for whatever reason, um, you can learn to step back. You can learn to take care of yourself. You can learn that that's their stuff. It's not about you. And then you can set boundaries like, so some really basic boundaries might be that you don't listen to verbal abuse. If it's happening on the phone, you say, "Okay, I'll talk to you later," hang it up. You don't argue about it, don't engage in it, and they will get the hang of this. I call it a grown-up timeout. So it's basically, and if you're in their presence and they start rah, 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 then you go, "Okay, I'll see you guys later," and you leave. So again, it's a grown-up timeout. So you're removing yourself whenever there's abusiveness, verbal, if there's gaslighting, if there's any of that really toxic stuff coming your way, grown-up timeout. See you later, bye. And then if they're like, "Why did you blow out? Why did you hang up on me? Blah, blah, blah." It's like, "Well, I just don't feel the need to listen when you're starting to go off on me. I don't find it respectful. And I'm going to take care of myself by leaving the conversation at that point. We can get together later when you're a little calmer and a little more rational. I'm fine with that. But in the moment, I'm going to take care of myself by leaving or hanging up the phone." And pretty soon they'll get the message that you just don't tolerate that stuff anymore. So you're no longer accepting that kind of behavior from them. And a lot of times that works. So, and I've seen it thousands of times with people I didn't think it would work with. And so people will say, "Boundaries don't work." Well, they actually always work. So either that person learns that you're serious and you're not going to be treated that way anymore, and they start listening to you and they stop disrespecting you, or they disrespect you more, they escalate, they get worse. But either way, it worked because either it worked because they stopped treating you that way, or it worked because it gave you the information you needed to know that that relationship won't work. So either way, it worked. It gave the information or it resolved the problem. So boundaries are the way to handle narcissistic parents. Um, in that gaslighting world, again, I wouldn't engage in arguing with them. There's no point. You're never going to change that delusion. Okay. They're literally in a delusion. So, delusion means that they're just not in touch with the same reality, and they are so attached to it that you cannot convince them otherwise. The level of attachment to that delusion equals the level of severity of the narcissism or other personality disorder. Sometimes there's a mix of personality disorders. Sometimes there are borderline traits, and we can talk a little bit about that. Maybe not today, but borderline traits are more of and I had one of those questions in here too, but that becomes, um, they're more in a frantic refusal, a frantic need to not be abandoned. And so, whereas narcissism is all about control and manipulation and power, borderlines have an absolute freak out of and collapse when they feel like they're going to be abandoned. And so there's just a little bit of a different flavor, oftentimes very similar behaviors, and oftentimes just as delusional. And the borderline is typically looks like that martyr narc, because they will always blame you and they will always act the victim. So that's kind of another stuff. But again, some of these are very mild, and I've had lots and lots of people with borderline personality come for help, whereas very few narcissists. Okay, exactly. Have done that. Yet I am the problem. So they're always going to say that you're the problem, but you don't need to own that, right? You know what the truth is, and you can own your truth. You don't need to get bought into their truth. So when you know your truth, stick with that And but don't you again, you don't want to argue that point, because if someone's in that delusion and they're not going to let go of that delusion, why would you want to beat your head against that wall? It's kind of like standing in front of a moving train. It's not going to stop. Your body is not going to stop that train. You're just going to get mowed down. So don't engage in any kind of arguing with somebody with really medium or severe narcissism. It's a losing battle. Much better to step back, watch the circus go by, and allow it to just be. And if you need to, because they're coming at you with any kind of verbal or obnoxiousness, then you can remove yourself. And again, it's a grown-up timeout. And sometimes a few of those grown-up timeouts help. And sometimes you have to do a lot of them. And sometimes you do enough grown-up timeouts to know that this is no longer worthwhile and you're going to get out of the relationship entirely and go no contact. So I want to pause and say, oh, yay, some people from Scotland again. That's awesome. So let's kind of start to wrap up. I think, having been a therapist for a million years, I sort of have a 50-minute time limit in my brain, and then I start to kind of get wonky. So if you want to, do this work, like I said, this is available on Amazon. I put the link in the very beginning of this, and you can also just look it up. It's on Kindle or Amazon, and I hope it's helpful. And please let me know how you receive it and how you like it or not. This will be recorded and it'll be available. If you got a lot out of this, please share it on your social media. And if you're not subscribed yet, please do. Share things on social media so that other people in the world who are struggling with these things can get the help. I always forget to say that after my videos, but like and share and leave more comments. I will try to get to them. You guys were really active today in this live stream, so I didn't get to a lot of the ones that I had printed out for myself. So, but I will see you again in 2 weeks. If this is super helpful, maybe I'll start doing it every week. Give me your opinions in the comment section, and most of all, take really good care of yourselves, and I'll see you in a couple weeks. Okay, bye-bye.